Hello, everyone. Welcome to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. This is the Going Solo with Cece show. We're also going to touch a little bit on the authors, meet the authors corner here too tonight. So I'm kind of excited about that. But those of you that have first time tuning in, we are a radio, TV, and podcast station. We have a live streaming radio station that is a sister to this particular outlet that we have, which we consider this our internet TV. And we are the #1 internet singles talk network. And so we're really proud of that. We are one of the first ones out there that really build a singles network. So it's called Going Solo Network. And our website is goingsolomedia.com right above me here. So you can see that. So tonight we are going to do something I think a little bit different. You know, here on Going Solo with Cece, I try to really kind of shake it up a bit. We have a few different things, but my goal is to really help move you through to living your best life. And sometimes as we're on that journey, as we're on that transition, we just don't know, right? We're kind of thinking, what's going on with our lives? What's happening with our lives? Well, we're going to find out tonight, and it's going to be really exciting. This is something new I have never experienced or heard of. And so I want to bring our guest right here with us tonight. Hello.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. We have Tahnee Woolf here. She's the author of Introducing the 10 Terrains of Consciousness, Understand Yourself and Other People in Our World. And I think this is really going to help us with relationship building. So let's talk a little bit, Tahnee, about how you got into doing what you're doing, you know, how you started opening up for you, and then we'll talk about what it is exactly.
Yes. Well, I've actually co-authored this book with my colleague, Ellen David Reed, who normally sits beside me in interviews. So it's a bit unusual for me to speak about it by myself. But it's very interesting to be on a dating show, relationship show, talking about this, because Ellen and I, at the time we created this material, were in a relationship. And then we broke up many years ago, and now we're just colleagues. But I think it was a combination of the masculine and the feminine. And also, Alan has a very scientific background, Gnostic background. He's deeply steeped in the mysticism and the esoteric arts. And I've had a background much more with people, human dynamics. I used to be a lawyer. I've been an academic. I've been a personal development coach, a Feldenkrais practitioner. And I spent most of my life deeply trying to understand human dynamics. And Alan spent most of his life trying to understand the macro things happening on the planet, like politically, economically, historically. But both of us have been on a very deep spiritual journey in our lives and a very deep healing journey. And so when we came together, which was in about 2011, initially for a romantic relationship, we found ourselves continually asking ourselves the question, what is underneath people's behaviors? Because both of us had shifted a lot as we became more awake and aware and self-responsible and coming less from victim consciousness, more sort of in a spiritually awake way of living over the decades. And both of us had seen that other people operated very differently. We're coming from a very different paradigm to us and to our friends. And we started to try and figure out what is underneath this. Is it just people's beliefs? Is it just their conditioning? Is it just their worldview? Or is there something deeper? And over time, we came to really see very clearly that it's a person's relationship to their infinite self that is different. So if you think about it, this is a little metaphor that my colleague devised. He sort of explains, like, this is the one point of the infinite consciousness that we all are, the interconnectedness. Some people call it God, some people call it spirit, some people just call it awareness. And if you like imagine this rubber band is like the degree of separation that we have from that. Actually, I'm going in the wrong direction. The degree of separation that we have from that one point here. And so depending on how much charge we have, conditioning, childhood trauma, what's happened in our past lives, we may be very, very far from that point of unity with oneness. We may be coming from a very victim consciousness, fear-based place. And as we heal, we're healing back to unity. We're always healing back to the oneness that we always were underneath all of our human ego stuff. And so what happens is this is actually a continuum that people can move through as they evolve and awaken and grow and become progressively more self-responsible. And it affects every area of our life, how we show up in our relationships, how we show up in our work, how we show up in the world generally, how we relate to other people. And it becomes very relevant in kind of dating and relationships if you are at a different point in this journey than the person you're dating. And you're actually coming from different paradigms. It's like one of you is wearing purple glasses, one of you is wearing green glasses, and you're looking at the same thing, but you're seeing it from a completely different place through a completely different lens, and it can create a lot of conflict. So really that's how we came up with it. It was just through our conversations and our continual asking of this question, what is underneath the differences between people? Why do people seem to be at such different stages in their journey and coming from such different paradigms? And because Alan has such a scientific macro brain and I have such an interpersonal micro brain, like these two eyes looking at the same question over many, many years started to become very clear. And that's how this emerged.
It's amazing. Because you all have a test that you can do. And we were talking about it prior to the show. And because I had never heard of this before. And so I'm thinking, okay, I do, believe in the universe and things happening. And, you go through all of that and everything. And I believe that we have we all have a purpose in life and travel down through that type of stuff. But when I came across you guys, I thought, whoa, this is really fascinating. This is very, very interesting. And so you have this quiz, and so I'm going to put it up so everyone knows. You take this quiz, it's $5. It's not expensive, but it's very interesting because you have certain questions that you ask. So tell me a little bit about how did you come up with the type of questions in which to ask to try to understand where you are?
Yeah, one of the reasons that it's taken us so long to really start talking about this out in the world like we are now, we actually wrote our book 5 years ago, is it took us a long time to develop this test accurately. Everyone who heard us talk about this when we first wrote the book 5 years ago was like, I want to know what terrain I'm at right now. And we were like, oh my God, how are we going to do that without interviewing them for hours to really get their fundamental relationship with reality underneath what spiritual workshops they've done and what spiritual books they've done and their mental knowledge of where are they at in their journey in an embodied sense, truly. And so initially we developed a very long questionnaire. It took an hour to do, an hour to assess, plus people wrote essays. We got very accurate, analysis of where someone was at. And over time, we started to realize we could simplify it, we could make it shorter, and we started to realize which questions really accented where someone's terrain was at and which questions more revealed their conditioning or their mental understanding. Just over those years, it's taken us a few years to get it to the point where we actually could turn it into a 10-minute quiz. It's like a self-analysis. It's very easy. It's quite fun, super quick, and it's accurate. And I'd say 95% of cases we've had people, then they get a report. It's about 40 pages long. And the report that you get basically tells you exactly where you're at. Actually, I'm going the wrong way again. No, this way. It's hard because the thing is fruit that I'm looking at. The thing is, yeah, you can see exactly where they're at in this journey of awakening, and everybody's point is perfectly wonderful. There's no better place than any other, but it's just really helpful to know where you're at. And in this report, you'll start to understand why you're facing the challenges you are at this point in your life, and what the lessons are, because each of these is a different school. It's like a different mystery school, different school of life. And you're learning very different things at each terrain. And so you can start to understand why you're having these lessons over and over that you're being asked to learn on a deeper spiritual level, and also what the gifts are. At each terrain, people can offer very different gifts to the world. And that's why all these terrains are equally important, because we need people at each terrain to offer their gifts, even if they're coming from a more fear-based place or a more expanded place. It doesn't matter. It's still necessary for the tapestry of the collective field and how it's unfolding for our greater learning as a collective. And so people love to do the quiz because it's so quick, but then they like to read the report. And we say to people, read the report. And I know you've just done the quiz, so when you read it, sit with it for a couple of months, like really sit with it. Like, is this true for me? And people start to find, oh my God, it really is. It's showing up in how I'm relating to people and the choices I'm making, which health modalities I'm resonating with, which kinds of people I'm hanging, what kinds of healing modalities I'm drawn to, and what kind of work I'm drawn to. And especially if someone like yourself, with your quiz results, you got that you were moving from the connection-based terrain circle to the coherence-based terrain spiral. So if someone is moving from one to the other, it's really helpful to read this report because it explains why so many things are changing and how you see in the world.
And I will tell the audience, it is 40-some pages. And so I'm trying to read it, in between working. I'm playing hooky from work. And so I'm trying to read it, and it's like, but some of the aspects that I will share that the test was fun. It was fun to do. It was easy to do. It really kind of made you think a little bit. But what we talked about a little bit prior to the show is that when I was answering the questions, I kind of sometimes felt like maybe I was on the other pick the other one, but I wasn't quite there yet. And so that's where I think that transition part is that I'm experiencing myself. And I will share with everyone, I am a circle moving towards a spiral. That's what I am. And what I found interesting when I was reading the report that I got, which I got back very quickly. So it's not like you have to wait 2 or 3 days to get this report back or anything. It happened pretty quick. And I thought, whoa, that's interesting. And then it cost, I think I paid a little bit extra. I think I paid another $11 for something, but only because I was interested in it. I thought it was, I think it's very fascinating and I'd like to learn more. But Tahnee, what I noticed is that some of the things that were stated in there about me, I have been told by other people. And I thought to myself, my gosh, this is kind of like clicking. So, because at first I thought, this is just, fluff stuff. But then when I started reading some of the stuff in there, and then I remember, other people saying those things to me, I'm thinking, oh, wow, maybe I need to really pay attention to this report. So I slowed down my reading and I tried to absorb it more. But I find it fascinating. I'm going to print it out because I want to be able to have it close hand so that when something's happening, I can refer back to it. It's
actually quite a deep teaching, and we really say to people, like, sit with it, read it a few times. Like, it's deep. It's really about where you're at this point in your evolutionary journey. It's not about your personality type and your beliefs. It's deeper than that. And so you really start to see, like, why you're seeing things the way, or why you're being triggered by some things that you weren't 10 years ago and that you won't be in 10 more years. Why it's no longer resonating with those particular people or that kind of work or that kind of way of living and expressing and embodying yourself that maybe you were 10 years ago. Because the process of transitioning really can take decades sometimes, or some people might spend their whole life at one terrain and that all their choices are made from that place, and that's just what they're here to give to the collective field is from that place. They're here to go deeply into that terrain, and other people are here to really grow and expand and shift. Not everybody has the same journey, and they might move through 1 or 2 or even 3 terrains over the course of their life. And sometimes the shift can be quick, like if something massive happens or a near-death experience or a huge trauma or something that really causes you to just wake up and see the world completely differently. But sometimes it takes us really slowly, and there's tiny little subtle changes happening over those 10 years, 20 years until you find yourself, you're not in Kansas anymore. You wake up, you're like, I don't really see the world the way I used to,
Yeah, it's really fascinating. And the other thing is I took the time to read about the spiral and some of the others. I don't remember all that I read, but because you have to absorb it, I'm trying to do it quickly. But I will share with you is that we had a wonderful host, a wonderful guest on a previous show that I had on today that I think she's a spiral, and I saw it from just the way she talked, her vibration level, all of that. I could definitely tell that she's extremely positive, very uplifting, just a wonderful human being. But I was amazed at the difference, that just a little bit that I read, what I honestly kind of got from it. And I thought, what a positive thing, it's not like saying that wherever you're at is a bad place to be. It's just saying you have an opportunity to transition into other places and to open yourself up and to explore things and look at what you could have, what you could explore. And so, yeah, it's very cool. Very cool.
And it's really exciting that just from reading it, the little bit that you've read, you're already starting to apply it to people. Because what we've found is people who, they usually start with the quiz to find out about themselves, and then they go, okay, now I want to learn about the other 9 terrains and see where my father is at, and my husband, and the guys I'm dating, and my colleague, and what's going on the planet. Some people are really curious to see what terrain are the politicians and the leaders coming from, and that can explain a lot about what's happening on the planet because they don't see the world.
I don't think they're on there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
They're somewhere in space somewhere. No,
they're right.
They're hovering. They're hovering. They're which one is it?
and also
at the very end? Where would they be, the
Oh, it
politicians?
depends on which person. I'm not going to name names, but we can also see where we're at as a collective. So as a collective at the moment in the Western world, I'm trying to point to the right spot. We are at Diamond, the reflection-based terrain. We've been there in the Western world since about the 1960s. So people who are interested in culture and the shifts, like all the things that we've seen shift in our culture since the 1960s are a result of having moved from square, the order-based terrain, to diamond. And I can tell in just 1 minute what that means in a really superficial way. A square, or the order-based terrain, is a world where people get their sense of safety from being part of a system. So it's very much the smoothly running of society. I'm going to be an upstanding member of society. I'm going to follow the law. I'm going to do what authority figures tell me. I'm going to have the same career for 40 years and have financial stability. And it's just a world where it's all about being a cog in the machine so that the collective majority can live in a smoothly functioning society. What happens as someone shifts to diamond, or as a society shifts to diamond, the reflection-based terrain, that's the shift to where it becomes about, well, hang on a sec, I decide who I am. I'm going to choose my path in life. I'm going to be a unique individual, and I'm going to forge my own path and be an entrepreneur and innovate and push over the square and recreate our culture. And this is where we start to see questioning of gender identity and decentralization of information, like we've seen on the internet, and customization in products, and just everything about how society works, from when we used to all read the one encyclopedia to now where we listen to millions of opinions on the internet, is the shift from square to diamond. Yeah. But the shadow side of that, of us as a collective being at diamond, is diamond is a terrain that's run by the mind and human ingenuity, and it's not until a person or a culture shifts to the next one, this way, the connection-based terrain circle, where there's a real shift from head to heart, and from focusing externally on what the world thinks of you to focusing into what's true for you as a being. And people, so a lot of your listeners may be sort of in that transition from diamond to circle, from being more outer focused in their masculine energy to shifting into a more kind of feminine relationship with the world, surrendering more, listening deeply to your body, listening to your community, connecting to your community, connecting to the earth. It's where a lot of indigenous cultures are at. And as a collective, one of the things we've been talking about a lot in our interviews is how this coronavirus kind of global shutdown has started to just be the little beginning of that shift towards circle, just the slowing down of all the busyness, allowing people to reconnect to their heart, their body, their relationships. It's one of the positives of this very difficult situation we're all in at the moment. So sometimes for people who like to understand where the world is at, this system can also be really, really helpful, as well as on a personal level, and obviously with our relationships by understanding other people. That's just a really super quick.
I know it's a lot. I know it's a lot for people, but it is so true. I've always often believed in the vibration level, being in a vibration level. And then when I read this, I thought, this is very interesting, because this is taking that to the next level, really, to really open it up. And when I read, like, and you said at the beginning of the show, it's like, if you're with someone and they're not on the same, and I've often thought of that, if you're not on the same vibration level, and it's the same thing with here, if you're not on the right terrain, right, you're not going to be in jive together. It's just not going to work for you. And that's very, very interesting. It's a great way to look at things very positive and everything.
But also by the same token, like it is so true that when we're with someone, who has the same personality type as us, life is easier. When we're with someone who has the same perspective, it's easier. When we're with someone who's at the same terrain of consciousness as we are, it's so much easier, because they just get us, we get them. But if you are someone who, say, is at circle moving to spiral, or at toroid, the fractal-based terrain, or the unity-based terrain, infinity, there's not going to be many people around you who are at that place. So often it can feel quite isolating, like I don't really have anyone. Everyone thinks I'm a bit out there, or I'm a bit woo. They don't understand why I'm working on staying in a state of peace and being and neutrality, and I'm not getting triggered like I used to. I don't want to go and fight to change the world. Like, they don't understand that about me anymore. So often when people do our quiz and they find out they're at spiral, or they find out they're at toroid, they kind of feel so relieved that, okay, there's nothing wrong with me. This is a really normal stage of evolution. And there are other people out there the same as me who've been through the same journey and the same growth points and the same awakening. And they can start to recognize those people. But at the same time, once you understand the other terrains, you actually can get along with those people a lot better. So yes, they're never going to see the world the way you do. But once you start to understand what's driving them, what makes them feel safe, what their fears are, which you will find out as you start to learn about this. Like, we have a book called Introducing the 10 Terrains of Consciousness, and explains as a chapter about each terrain. We've had a lot of people read our book and go, oh my God, I finally understand my husband. I finally get why he doesn't want me to do all these energy work or natural therapies and he wants me to do chemotherapy. I never could understand it. Now I really get it. And now I can talk to him in his language. So we can start to speak to people in the language from their terrain that lands with them better, that makes them feel heard and understood. We found that it helps us develop so much more compassion, not just for ourselves, but for the people in our lives. Obviously for ourselves, because once we know where we're at, we can be really excited and grateful about where we're at. But also for the people in our lives who may not be at the same terrain. And rather than trying to make them shift and grow and expand and hurry up and learn all these lessons, you could just go, actually, it's cool that they're at that place because that's a really juicy place to be in your journey. And I want to support that for you. And I want to allow you to be there and actually try and understand where you're at rather than controlling you and trying to make you shift on my agenda and my timeline.
Yeah. I totally agree with that wholeheartedly. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, let's talk about it just briefly, if you can, all the different ones. And then people can kind of look at it and see, and maybe they'll take the test and then they can determine which one they are, which would be very cool. So I think that would be great. Okay, you guys, we are listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. This is the Going Solo with Cece show, and we're just going to have like 5 seconds of silence. So just stay right there. We'll be right back. Okay, we're coming right back. It's WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. We're a radio, TV, and podcast station. We're the #1 internet singles talk network. This is the Going Solo with Cece show. I am Cece Schatz. I'm the doyen of relationship building. Our website is right up there. It's goingsolomedia.com. So tonight we have with us a wonderful guest, and she's sharing so much information with us. It's just tremendous. We have Tahnee Woolf with us. She's the author, and she actually is the co-author of this wonderful book that's out. It's introducing the 10 terrains of consciousness, understand yourself, other people in our world. And it's also by Alan David Reed. And then of course, our lovely guest here tonight, Tahnee Woolf. And there is the information. If you'd like to get the book, it's a www.10 TEN and then terrains TERRAINS.com/book. And so if you just go to the website, which is the .com, you can probably find it there pretty easily. So again, it's TEN TERRAINS.com. Okay, so I want to make sure we're in audio. You guys get that information. Well, welcome back to the show. And now we covered a lot at the beginning, and but I'd like to cover the different, if we can just briefly, and I hope I'm not putting you on the spot, but just the different ones, and just so the audience out there can kind of listen and hear about what it's about. And then if they want to go in and take this test, we'll share with them the test. There's a quiz right on that website under quiz, and then you can take the quiz, which is like $5, so it's not expensive. So let's talk a little about the 10 different terrains of consciousness.
Beautiful. I'm going to run through each of them. But before I do, I just want to say one thing, because, just hearing you describe the show and what it's about, I just wanted to honor the show that I'm on, which is all for single people. And I am a single person too. So I love the fact that you're doing this show. And I just want to share with you, those of you out there who are single, how the 10 terrains can be helpful in your journey as a single person, because it actually really helps me a lot in my life. So when you're out there dating and sensing people who's a match for me, it's really important to tune into, are we compatible emotionally? Now we're compatible sexually? Now we're compatible mentally? But also are we compatible spiritually? Like, are we at the same point in our journey? And it's okay to not be, but it's useful to understand that when you're first dating someone. So I might go on a date with someone and they're at the same terrain as me. And so there's just such a sense of ease because they get where I'm at. They get the journey I've been on. They've been on the same journey. They're at the same point in their awareness and their sense of self-responsibility, and they're coming from love more than fear. And they've done all that work on their triggering, their wounding, and their conditioning. I know that they can meet me deeply on a spiritual level. And then I've just got to, feel into are they a match for me emotionally and sexually, mentally, and all the things we normally focus on. And then I've had experiences where I've met men who really were compatible with me in every other way, mentally, emotionally, sexually, but the terrain was different. But because I understand the terrain that the person is at, I feel like, okay, this actually could work. Well, sometimes the gulf in terrain is too big. Like, I'm at Toroid, that terrain there. And if I'm on a date with a man at Square, that's 4 terrains apart. It's a really big gulf in where we're at in our awareness of the world and our experience and our sense of relationship to the infinite consciousness that we all are. And I might make a decision, I'm never going to be understood by this person. I can date them, but it could be, just a bit more exhausting. Whereas I might date someone at Circle and I'm at Torrid, and I go, actually, he's coming from love. He's at that point in his journey where he's coming from love. He's connected to his body. He's connected to the earth. That's beautiful. I don't need him to be at the same terrain as me. That there's enough there that we can get along, and I can understand where he's at and support him in his journey, and he can understand where I'm at. He just got to learn about it. So it's just really useful information to know as a single person to help you assess someone.
I totally agree. Totally agree. I mean, I remember I was dating someone and they just didn't get me, even though all the other elements were okay. You know, it was all really great. And you'd think, okay, this is an ideal relationship, but he just didn't get me.
Exactly.
I mean, didn't, and so we must have been at the different terrains, and so I think that is very important, and the understanding. And then also our audience is tremendous about transition, so they're in a transition state, and so when they're being exposed to information such as yours, they're also understanding that where they're at and maybe where they're going to be going, and they can open the doors for them to be able to allow that to be able to be more peaceful for them.
Yeah, and sometimes you will attract in a partner or a person you're dating who is at the terrain that you're moving towards, because they're almost coming in some ways as a teacher or as a model for where you're shifting to. So when I met Alan, when we were in a relationship, he was already at the fractal-based terrain Toroid, and I was at the coherence-based terrain Spiral, and I could feel on some level my spirit or my soul bringing this person into my life so I could learn from. Now, not every relationship is about that, but sometimes it is, or it might be the other way around, that they may be coming into your life because they're moving into the place you're in and they're wanting to feel some sort of mentoring in some way, or just to feel the alignment of where they're coming into, that person's at the same place. So you could start at the same terrain as someone and they could shift and expand, and you might stay where you are. Everybody's journey is different, but what we found is the more you understand this, the more you can work with that and really get it and support the person on their journey. And it doesn't have to mean a breakup of a relationship. Whereas if you don't have this information, sometimes it can be, oh my God, my partner's changed so much, I don't even recognize him. And it's terrifying when you don't really understand why they have. But if you understand this model, you might go, oh, they've just shifted from square to diamond. That's a massive shift. I need to support them on that, rather than be scared by it.
Right.
So it's just really
that
crucial.
Makes sense. Yeah, that makes absolutely sense. Absolutely sense.
So do you want me to go through them now? I just thought I'd say something about the dating.
You can go through them. That would be great. So give everyone a little bit better understanding.
I'll go through them super quickly. Obviously, I could speak for an hour about each one, or probably 10 hours about each one. And each of them really is a deep mystery school. So I'm just going to do a couple of sentences on each, just to get a feeling for what we're talking about here. And I also want to just point out that the two on each end, particle, the matter-based terrain, and no thing, the void-based terrain, you're not going to really meet people at those two terrains. Like there's just no one in our, but they're just there for the sense of completeness, like just to give you the full picture of humanity. But don't expect to meet people like people at no thing. They're like ascended masters. They're not even in physical form anymore. So you're not likely to meet them walking down the street. So I'll start with pyramid, the matter-based terrain, and I'm noticing that the screen is showing them in the opposite order, so it's a little bit confusing for me if I'm pointing at the wrong thing. That's why this software that we're using is showing everything backwards to me. So the first 5 are what we call outer focus terrain, so people are sourcing their sense of self from outside of themselves. And the second 5 are what we call inner focus terrain. So people are sourcing their sense of self from their inner being. So that's one of the key differences between the first 5 and the second 5. The first 5 are more coming from reaction, from fear, and the second 5 are more coming from response, from love. That doesn't mean everyone's always in fear and everyone's always in love, but it's just more and more as a person shifts. So the first one, the matter-based terrain, you could think of this as like a caveman. You're not going to meet people in our modern world like this. There's someone who's coming purely from fear 100% of the time, in every moment. Where's the tiger? I better run. There's no thinking, there's no meaning, there's no story, there's just pure gut reaction. The second terrain, which we call the faith-based terrain, radial, I'm just putting that one, radial. And if you're listening and can't see what I'm pointing to, you can follow along at the website 10terrains.com. TENTERRAINS, and you'll see that each of these terrains has a different symbol. We've actually created 10 icons, and they're quite captivating because they actually tell your subconscious the story of human evolution as you look at them. So the second one, the faith-based terrain radial, this is the terrain of fundamentalist people. It's a terrain where someone has given their power so far outside of themselves that they will obey what someone they've given their power to says to their death. So if they believe their God is telling them to do a suicide bomb, they will do it without question, hoping that they're going to go to paradise. It's a very fundamentalist terrain where you're completely disempowered to something outside yourself. The next terrain, pyramid, pointing to that one, pyramid, the will-based terrain. At this terrain, someone says, well, I'm not going to give my power to someone outside myself. I'm in charge of my own destiny. Thank you very much. And this is a terrain, you could think of it as like the Wild West. I'm in charge of my own destiny, but there's a fear about the world, like the world is out to get me. This is not a safe space. It's a dog-eat-dog world. It's every man for himself. Whoever's got the quickest gun is going to win. So my survival strategy at Pyramid is to amass as much wealth and power as I can and an ability to dominate and control other people. And so you've seen this throughout history. Empire and conquest and domination of one people over another is usually coming from leaders at this terrain, the will-based terrain, or from cultures at this terrain, the will-based terrain pyramid. But in our modern day and age, you can see it in gang warfare, and a lot of the mob violence we're seeing is coming from people at this terrain, very disgruntled and angry at the government telling them what to do, and they're wanting to overthrow everything because they just want to take the power back in their own hands. There's not really a sense of caring about the greater good of the society. It's much more focused on keeping myself and my family safe because there's a feeling of constantly being in danger. The next terrain, the shift from pyramid to square. So I'm just trying to find it here. Pyramid to square, the order-based terrain, this is what we call the terrain of the mainstream. So the shift that happens here is the jump from being focused on keeping yourself safe at everyone else's expense and being self-interested to caring about the functioning of society as a whole, the common good of the majority. And what keeps me safe at square is the feeling that I'm part of a smoothly running system. So we've seen this from about the time of the industrial era until about the 1960s in the Western world. It was a society governed by law and order. Everybody believed what authority figures told them. They read the same newspapers. They read the same encyclopedias. They did the same career for most of their life, and they were very comfortable with that because they felt like they were a cog in a bigger machine and everybody was playing their role. And it's very much focused on roles and contribution via my role to the smooth running of my system. And so the terrain after that, which we talked about earlier in the interview, the reflection-based terrain diamond, this is the terrain that we're currently at in the Western world, but there's still many countries, like I'm in Australia right now, my country is at square still. We haven't fully shifted into diamond yet, but a lot of Europe and a lot of parts of the United States are now at diamond. And diamond is a terrain, as I said earlier, of individual expression. It's like, I'm going to decide who I am. I'm not going to listen to authority figures and what my parents told me and what society tells me. I'm going to decide my own unique identity. It's a terrain about identity. I'm a healer. I'm a visionary. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an artist. This is my gender expression. This is my artistic expression. And it's a terrain where it's very much about expansion and growth. And so a lot of what we see in the spiritual world at the moment is coming from diamond. It's all about manifesting and setting intentions and goal setting and visions. And it's about, I decide from my mind how my life is going to look, and then I make that happen. And so it's a very powerful terrain. We've seen innovation through the centuries, but there's a shadow side of it, like there is with every terrain. And so the shift from diamond to circle is called the connection-based terrain. I'm just going to make sure I'm going the right way, from diamond to circle. So the connection-based terrain, you can see if you've been looking at the little icons as I've been going through this, that the first 5 icons have a little dot inside the icon, and that refers to the individual and the ego. What happens as someone shifts from diamond to circle is the ego starts to fall away. It's more really the identity starts to fall away, and a person starts to come more from a place of being. I'm connected to the earth. I'm connected to my body. I'm connected to my heart. And through my heart, I'm connected to my community. And there's a care for the vulnerable members of society. And just like we saw at Square, which is more of a collective focused terrain, less individual, we're coming back to another collective focused terrain here, because they tend to go from collective to individual to collective to individual, and from masculine to feminine to masculine to feminine. So circle is again another terrain where it's more of a feminine focus. It's more of a collective focus. But this time, it's not just about protecting the majority of people, it's about connecting to and protecting the earth. And it's a really visceral connection to the web of life. Like if a tree is cut down, you will feel it at circle. You'll feel it in your body, you'll feel it in your heart. It's not just an ideology like we would see at diamond, it's really embodied. So there's a lot of body work at circle, a lot of emotional, deep emotional work, a lot of forgiveness work is happening at circle. And then as someone shifts from the connection-based terrain to the coherence-based terrain spiral that has a symbol of the spiral. At this point, is not just a connection to the web of life, like we saw of circle. It expands out beyond that to a connection with all of the multidimensional cosmos. And people at this terrain are working much more in a multidimensional sense, often working with energy. And you can be working with energy at any of the other terrains, but it's much more of a sense of I'm a multidimensional being, and they're always trying to bring themselves into alignment between what my higher self is feeling, what my mind, my heart, my body, my gut, my inner guidance. Everything's always having to come into alignment. And at Spiral, it's very much about I create my own reality from the inside out. I'm self-responsible. I need to clean myself up and clean my triggers up and work on my shadow stuff and come to forgiveness. And it's back in an individual terrain, but at a much deeper level than we saw at Diamond. And then the next shift from the coherence-based terrain Spiral to the fractal-based terrain Toroid. This is a terrain, once again, a collective focus terrain. And this time it's somebody who's shifted even beyond Spiral, and they're now really deeply feeling the quantum field. And it's not just a concept, like they're really feeling the interplay of the collective tapestry that we all are and the oneness that we all are. And it gives them a really deep sense of trust. And often the kind of great truths that have come through the collective field into someone's awareness and then out their mouth to teach it, like the great religious teachers or scientific teachers, people like Walter Russell, Nikola Tesla, who just have really intuitive knowings of how the world works. They tend to be at this terrain, the fractal-based terrain. They ask a question and they get a very clear answer from their spirit or from the infinite that we all are, and it comes through them. And a lot of the teachings that people have studied from over the centuries and millennia have come from people at the fractal-based terrain, Toroid. And then the terrain after that, the unity-based terrain, Infinity. This is the terrain that people would call enlightened. But there's actually just lots of people at this terrain. When I say lots of people, I mean 0.01% of the population, but they're around and they're not all Buddha. You know, it could just be a little guy on the street that you walk right past. These are people who are at such a place of surrender to the divine in every moment that there's no more ego. There's just no more agenda. There's no more attachment to outcomes. They're just in a place of service every single moment. Where do you want me? Where do you want me? And there's so little ego that when you're around someone in infinity, they feel very quiet. They feel very humble. They're not the big spiritual teachers. Most of the big spiritual teachers are coming from Diamond, the reflection-based terrain, or maybe Spiral, the coherence-based terrain. But at Infinity, they don't have any need to teach. They just be. And when you're around them, you learn and expand by being around them because their frequency is so high. Their hearts are so open. They're so connected to the infinite internet, if you want to call it that. Like they're permanently online. You know, there just is no ego anymore. So when you're around them, you feel really at peace and calm, and you're able to access your own infinite self more than you might be when you're not around them. So they're very potent beings, but they're not in any state of doing. They're not really trying to do anything. They just be. And as I said, the final one, the no thing, the void-based terrain no thing, is really the place even beyond infinity, even beyond unity. It's where someone no longer even needs to believe in gravity or food, and they can just exist purely as a light being, as a light body, like an ascended master, but probably not going to meet people of that terrain. So that's a super quick run through of the 10. I hope I didn't take too long. Tried to do as good as
that's wonderful. And thank you for sharing it with us. It's tremendous. It's very, very interesting. And I think that it really will help us to be able to not only know where we're at, where we're transitioning, but also a better understanding of those around us, which is a blessing in itself. So I want to thank you so much for sharing it with us. It's absolutely beautiful. And I do feel that those around us, you know, can definitely benefit from it. So again, I want to make sure we get all of your information up there. And there's your website. It's TENTERRAINS.com. And then your phone number, if you guys want to call, it's 0422-530-206. So you're in Australia, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the phone number. And then, of course, she's on Skype. And there's her information on Skype, which is 10 Terrains. What is it? 10 Terrains.
10 Terrains.
Your name. It's TAHNEE. And then the email, of course, is her name, which is TAHNEE@10terrains.com. Facebook, of course, she's on, and that's at 10 Terrains. And then Twitter is at 10 Terrains. So.
And actually, I'll say one last thing, that we actually have a lot of YouTube videos, especially in the last few months. So if you go to YouTube and look up 10 Terrains, TEN, we just finished filming a series of 10 videos about each terrain and how they're responding differently to the coronavirus lockdown. And it's dramatically different at each terrain, how people are responding to the fear of the virus and the fear of getting sick and the fear of the government and all that. It's very interesting. So that's a really good way to see really quickly how this plays out in the real world and why the people around you are not responding to this situation the same way you are, because they're probably at a different terrain. So I really recommend go subscribe to the YouTube channel and watch that series.
Yeah, that I'll do that. I think it'd be a great idea. Now, again, everything is right there on the website. So if you just go to 10terrains.com, you'll find the book, you'll find the quiz, you'll find all of the information there, all the contact information. And I think this was a great show. I mean, I was very interested. I'm looking forward to finishing my pages, reading about myself.
Yes, definitely let us know once you finish your report. Send me an email. I'd love to hear how it resonated with you, how it landed with you.
Yeah, I definitely will. I think it's very, very interesting, and you're a delight. Thank you so much. So are there any last words you'd like to share with our audience tonight?
I just want to say I feel so excited to be finally able to speak about this to the world, because like me and our close friends and our close people who first stumbled onto this 5 years ago have been so excited about it for so long. But it's so fabulous to be able to finally get it out there, to be able to have these conversations with people around the world. And my real only goal with this is to help people have more compassion, like more compassion for ourselves, where we're at in our journey, instead of trying to be enlightened and striving to always grow. Like, it's okay to be where we're at. There's amazing gifts where we're at. If we could all just embrace where we're at and relax, then humanity's evolution would actually happen much faster. And also to have compassion for other people and where they're at, so that we can all get along better and live in greater harmony with less war and less conflict and more support and love and empathy where everybody's at. So I'm really passionate about that and about compassion and harmony and empathy. So if this helps in any way, then I feel really, really grateful to be part of it.
Yeah, that's great. Just, like, I'm all about building relationships with people, really connecting and helping those that are struggling. And so making that transition, I think this is really great, positive information. It's awareness. The more awareness we can be about ourselves, about others that we're around, the easier our life will be. And so, yeah, it's all great. And so thank you so much. I know we're going to have your partner, Alan David Reed. He's going to be on in November. And so I'm going to hopefully complete my
colleague, not my partner.
I'm sorry, your colleague. What did I say?
Everyone always calls him my husband, like we haven't been together for years.
He's your colleague.
A wonderful, very wise colleague. I really highly recommend you listen to him. He's a brilliant genius.
So I'm going to pick his brain after I read my 40 pages, and then we'll have to talk about it, and maybe we can get some other people that have read it, take the quiz and see what they think too. That would be kind of fun.
That'd be great.
Yeah, that would be really great. But I want to thank you so much for spending the time with us here tonight and sharing this information with us. It's very unique, and it's very positive. So it's just great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for what you're doing. I mean, as a single person, I'm going to speak on behalf of all single people. I'm very grateful for what you're doing, what you're offering, kind of conscious places where single people can meet. It's a beautiful thing, and it's really needed. So
thank you. And I hope you'll join us on our journey as we continue with our Going Solo network. We're building out a complete singles network and connecting those so they don't feel alone. That's the whole thing. Feeling alone in today's world, and especially with all this happening around. If we can come together, even on the internet, it's at least it's a bonding type of experience.
It is.
Yeah, that's what's important. For sure. Well, thank you so much. And I look forward to maybe having you come back on, following up with you in the future.
I'd love to.
There.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody. It's been wonderful to share this with you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Wow, what a great show. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. I mean, again, I took the test. I enjoyed taking it. It was very inexpensive to take. It really kind of taught me a little bit more about myself and really the direction of where my life is going. And if you can get the same thing out of this, I think that would be a blessing. So I hope that you will take this information, maybe investigate it a little bit more, see if it works for you, and we'll go from there. I'd love to hear about it. Just email me at goingsolonetwork@gmail.com. Again, our website's right there. It's goingsolomedia.com. Those of you that are tuning in a little bit late, I am CC Schatz, the doyen of relationship building, and this is WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. We're a radio, TV, and podcast station. We're the #1 internet singles talk network. And I want to thank you for joining us here tonight on Going Solo with Cece. I'll catch you back right here on the same network. So bye for now. Have a good one.